Hi there, it's Dan again. Welcome to day 5. This is a really special call, this one. There's a guy called Travis Sago who I'm just about to jump on a webinar with. We're going to talk about, this business model. Basically, the way that we take other people's assets and cash flow them and take a large chunk of the profit. Okay, he's created a whole business around that. He calls it Beamer, Backend Marketing Agencies. He's done well over 100 million. I don't even know how much he's done, but he's had a severe influence on the way I run my business. And he's a very clever guy, so I'm excited about it. What we're going to talk specifically about is, now you've got your Sleeping Beauty Android built, you know how to do the Kiss of Life with Prince Charming. You know how to demo the Sleeping Beauty Android on the playground. Now it's going to be about getting coffee dates, how you can get this experience of the demo onto the client on Zoom, where they'll just be so impressed with it that they'll sign up, which most of them do, okay? The most important thing that you've got to focus on now is how we can get a lot of these coffee dates with the right type of people, and that's what we're going to talk about with Travis today, okay? This brings me on to the fact that we're on day 5. This is the last video we've got of the challenge. I really hope you've enjoyed it. We've done our very best to give you everything you need to be able to run through this from day 1 to 5 and be able to start having coffee dates with clients and start onboarding them and doing deals, all right? It is super easy because what we're offering here is very low risk to the client, and all we have to do is demo it to them and they'll be on board. Others might want to move faster, and I want to let you know that we do have a program called Roya, which stands for Rent Out Your Android, and it's about building these Sleeping Beauty Androids and just rinsing and repeating over and over again for your clients, okay? It is a pretty elegant and simple business model. Inside Roya, we have how to scale this with Facebook ads, we have client contracts, onboarding checklists, how to do all the API stuff. We have weekly technical calls for those who need it. I'm also doing weekly calls at the moment where I'm just sharing the stuff that we're doing inside my own agency on a day-to-day basis. There's lots of cool stuff going on in there. You might be interested, you might not. If you are, then please send me an email at dan.wardrope@flexdigital.com with the subject line Roya Day 5, so I know you've taken the action and gone through the challenge and you're serious about moving forward. Or you can find me in the school group, which we've peppered throughout all of these videos. You should be in there. If you're not, please do come across. It's a free group. Find me in Roya and send me a message there, private message, and we can have a chat. All right, I'm gonna move on to the webinar now with Travis. Can't wait to introduce you guys to him. He's awesome. And I'll see you after the webinar. Take care. I wanted to talk to you, Travis. Some people will know you on this call, other people won't, but also a bit about your journey with Beamer, because this is essentially what we're doing, but we're souping it up with a bit of ChatGPT. And I'd love for you to kind of just give us a background to how it started, what's happened, and how it's all worked, and how we can relate it back to what we're doing.
You want the raw story, or do you want the polished up?
Give us the ugly stuff. Give us the ugly stuff.
Well, as a young man, I was in the service, and I was born and raised in a blue collar family, and you had to work your ass off, right? And we almost kind of got like a trophy for working our asses off, right? But we didn't make a lot of money. And same thing when I was a tech for a POS company, and I would just work my ass off all the time. And it's great to get the Sailor of the Year or the Employee of the Month and all that shit, but it doesn't really turn out to make a lot of income sometimes, right? So I'll skip all the story, like how I started out as an affiliate, right? And I was selling all kinds of things. I realized I had a weird skill of matching products with groups of people, right? And I just put those together, and I was very much did it in paid stuff. And I really liked that model because I didn't have to do any of the delivery, right? I was like, I can go in there and sell it and be done with it. So I really like that. At the time I was doing a lot of just low ticket stuff. Like I was selling $47 things and $37 things, $99, like $500 was a big ticket to me back then. You got to make a lot of those sales, right, to break your nut, right, every month on that stuff, right? So then it's just a constant sales grind, sales, right? Ads, those kind of things. You're trying to build your own audience and your own list and everything, right? So I just wanted to do what I do best, and damn it, I wasn't trying to work hard. Like that's not what I was trying to do, right? Like I didn't want to run 99 yards, right, and get the trophy. I just wanted to run the last yard and get paid to score, right? So one of the things I realized in handling a lot of people's emails and databases and just working with people is everybody's very, very front end focused, right? Like, hey, how do I get more leads? How do I get more traffic? How do I sell my front end thing, right? But let me just ask the panel here, where's all of our money at? Where is the money typically made? Is it made on, like, everybody's like clawing it out, fighting it out, like duking it out over like, hey, let me run your ads for you, right? For a retainer and a percentage. I don't think that's a bad business model, but god dang, I didn't want to work that damn hard. Right?
Can you guys unmute yourself and let us know what have you got any ideas? I want to put you on the spot
What's that?
about where the money is.
I think it's retention, Dan. I think that I'm tired of burning clients for like a month or 3 months on just new lead gen.
Yeah. Retention. I can't really go into somebody's business unless I wanted to go in and teach and do all the delivery and teach them how to do retention so much, right? So that was more of a consulting thing. Like, but what happens when somebody gets, let's say they're getting 1,000 leads a week, right? And then they're getting customers too. Guess what they do with the people that don't buy? Guess what they do even with the customers that do buy? Guess what happens to those? Like, I would say 90-ish% of the time. Guess what happens to those? Absolutely nothing. Right. And so I started out, I called it a back end agency. I didn't call it a back end agency back then, but I just like, I don't want to work on their front end. Like, I'm really good at selling stuff. Why not just sell the thing? Right. And I realized I don't get paid to write emails. I don't get paid to do landing pages. I don't get paid to write copy. I only get, hopefully cussing's okay here. I only get paid to make that damn sales register ring, right? Like, ching, ching, ching. I've gotten, so we don't even use our own copy. We use the copy that's already existing, and they're totally okay with it. All they care about is we make the damn register ring, right? So I'm kind of like speeding up on that. But I worked for a long time on just old databases of prospects, which was good. I sell like, $2,000 things, $5,000 things. We did it in some service. I didn't myself do it in some service business, but I had other people doing it in service businesses, right? On a prospect list. And I think that one of the first like ahas came for me was like, we just sold a whole bunch of $1,000 product. I can't remember how much. It was like in the hundreds of $1,000 on to their old prospect lists, right? I'm like, okay, that was good, but I was still working too damn hard. Like I got to make all those damn sales, right? And they had a $10,000 thing, right? And I'm like, well, what if we just sold that? Because I'm getting like 25% on up to 50% of what we're doing, right? I'm like, well, what about all the people we just sold? So I'm like, surely, my brain was like, surely, like it couldn't comprehend, but surely these guys are doing something with that, right? And I said, well, what happens after they get through this? They're like, well, like we make an offer to go into other thing, but what happens after that? Nothing, right? So I'm like, what if I call it a second helping campaign there? We just took all the people that bought and we said, hey, thank you for buying. I don't know if you're open to it or not, but would you be interested in this? Right. And we crushed it like six figures with way less work on that, wow, that upsell. Right. So then I'm like, I'm just not even going to deal with prospects at all. I'm not saying there's not a good business. I'm not saying for you guys not to deal with prospects at all, because you guys are going to have like big prospect lists. Right. But I would much rather start at the bullseye, or I'd much rather start like not even at the 1 yard line. I want to start at the inch. I just want to take it the last dang inch. That's what I want to do. Right? Like, screw the trophies for working hard. Screw like being thought of as a hard worker, all those kind of things, right? I just want to get paid, right? Like,
100%.
and my customers were happier too, right? They like, because when the truth comes down to it, like all you guys are ex-paper lead people. Like if you drive somebody 1,000 leads, are they happy? Not most of the time. They're like, oh, these leads suck. They don't convert. Or even if they do convert, they want more. They want them cheaper, right? Because we're so far. Because what they're really after too is making the sales register ring, or they're after making their phone ring, right? Or they're after getting the commercial roofing job that the other guy didn't get, right? Because he got the lead first, right? That's what they're really after, right? The leads themselves, yeah, they will pay for them, don't get me wrong, right? But it's a lot of running. It's a lot of sweating, right? And so that was kind of the origin of that. And it's like, it's great because like I can sell a $10,000 thing, right? And as soon as I'm done selling it, I don't have to deliver it, right? Right. And I love to teach, but I don't want to. I only want to teach when I feel like it, right? I don't want to make my income and my livelihood dependent upon. This is just me. I don't want to make it dependent on me being popular, how big my following is, me being politically correct, how well I dance on YouTube or how well I dance on TikTok. I just don't want to make my life dependent on that, right? Because I might learn a little Sego shuffle one day, but it's going to not be popular the next day, right? So,
So, I guess the question is, how did you start landing these partners, or what did that look like? Once you had this
yeah,
breakthrough with the
yeah,
10K product. I mean, for us, that could be someone selling a solar panel deal. That's roughly the average order
yeah,
value of a solar panel is 10K, right? So, how did you take that and just roll it out over and over again to different clients?
yeah. So let me kind of back up a step, right? So we don't necessarily have to have a 10K product. You have to have anytime I find myself focusing on one number, it's not going to be as useful. So like I've got folks that work with companies that do $99 a month, but they've got lots of flow. In other words, they get lots of flow in there. So if they're getting 25% of $99 a month, but they can do 1,000 of those a month, right? Does that make sense? So what are those two numbers, right? Like what are the amount of opportunities that we have times the amount of sale? Does that make sense, right? So what are the amount of opportunities times the amount of sales times the conversion that we might get? And I always figure in there like how much blood, sweat, and tears am I going to have to put? I'd much rather put my money into something than blood, sweat, and tears. So I haven't done a lot of it this year, but we used to do a lot of direct mail, right? Why would we do direct mail? Because at all these customers, right? And for less than $1, I could mail them, get leads back, right? And get in their if they're making $1 million a year off their email list at 10, and they're getting a 10% open rate, right? Johnny, what do you think's going to happen if I hit their mailbox and like 100% of the people see it and they're making $1 million a year off of the
Oh, I think
email, right?
I think direct
You can make
response is phenomenal, man. I think you're flipping the game with that. I never thought about that. You're taking their email list and turning it into their mailbox. Wow. That's
That's right. So one of the things I want to do, and Dan was talking about, I think Dan or somebody was in Dan's group was talking about this, especially when you're dealing with brick and mortars. And I think most of you guys are dealing with brick and mortars, right, on some levels. But brick and mortars are almost more interested in how much money can you save them than how much money can you make them, right? It's true for online too. But if I'm like, hey, dude, like, what do you think would happen if we sent if you're making $1 million a year off 10% open rate, what do you think would happen, right? If we send a letter out to everybody, right? They're like, ooh, we'd probably crush it. I'm like, do you plan on ever mailing them? No. How come? Well, I don't know what to send them. I don't have the sales team. I don't want to pay for the postage, right? And I'm like, I got an idea. What if I funded all that for you, right? and we just split the revenue, right? I would handle the closing and the mailing and the copy and all that kind of stuff, right? Does that make sense?
Wow.
So you kind of went at an angle that they weren't used to, which is kind of the door opener for you to get your foot in the door.
Yep.
They hadn't heard of that before.
Yeah. So it's different with everybody that you talk to on some level. Every business is the same, but every business is different, right? Another guy that did this really, really well. I've talked to my people about this, so Ron and Honey might be, and Andrea might be familiar with this, but it's a really good book to read. It's called Ice to Eskimos by John Spolstra. And he kind of run this, he ran a sports agency, right? Basically a sports marketing agency. And he never drove leads for them. What he would do is he would go into like basketball teams that were like, they were second to last or the last, right? And guess what? You think it's hard or easy to sell tickets to a losing basketball team? Hard or easy? Give me a thumbs up if you think it's easy, a thumbs down if you think it's hard. It's hard, right? Especially the way that they would do it, because the sports teams left to their own, they would say, hey, please buy our tickets, right? And they would do more advertising on TV and stuff. What John would do is he'd say, hey, give me all your season ticket owners, or give me all your previous buyers. And what would he do? He'd send them a damn letter. And he realized he wasn't selling tickets to the game. One, he's like, okay, maybe they don't want to see this. They don't want to see this losing team, but they still have Michael Jordan coming in on their team, like all these people they want to see. So he would do special packaging, right? He would package it up differently. He also realized that a lot of mothers were getting the mail, right? A lot of moms, and they weren't buying a basketball game. They were buying a night of entertainment out for their kids. So they would have mascots to put on a little show, right? They would have cheap food, right? It's like a night of entertainment. And it didn't matter if the team won or lost, right? To sell those tickets, if that makes sense. So kind of getting to your question, Dan, is like, how do we get people to do this for, right? We have to give them what they want. And I know, like, you go, oh yeah, give them what they want. But like, I've been doing this for a long time. I worked with for a long time. And the number one sales problem, the number one sales mistake people make in their copy, in their sales thing, is they don't give people what they want. Anybody work with roofers here? Anybody work with roofers? Doesn't really matter. Give me a service business in the box, right? If I don't know which one we're doing, like chat or Q&A, but there we go. Flooring, solar.
We're looking at a roofer right here, baby.
Roofer.
We got a roofer. We got a roofer.
Perfect. Fences and decks. Solar, hot tubs, all of those. How many times a day? Take your HVAC guy. How many times a day? How much sleep do you guys think this guy loses over their customer database? They're like, oh, my customer database. You know what I need? I need a customer reactivation campaign. Right? And so this is what makes getting, like, first, what I call IOIs, the indicator of interest. Like IOIs come before a lead, right? If you understand how to get IOIs, indicators of interest, it's like people that turn their heads or people that raise their hand before the lead. It gets way easier to get that lead, right? But like the biggest mistake, like people will come in, like we do something for businesses called a sales saver campaign, and my guys will struggle. They're like, nobody wants this. I'm like, yes, that's exactly right. Nobody wants a sales saver campaign. Nobody's sitting there thinking that they want a sales saver campaign, right? I did a post today on my personal profile about this number one mistake. And I said, there's a hardware store salesperson trying to sell a hammer. The result, no sale. But there's another hardware store salesperson selling the gleam in a little girl's eye when she sees the playhouse that mom and dad just built for her, right? And they just sold $4,895 worth of lumber, roofing tiles, nails, screws, saws, a drill, and exactly one hammer, right? Because they're speaking to that thing that they want, right? So if we're like we do outreach, I'm going to show you something that's even better than just doing one-to-one outreach here in a minute. Like I've got an example here of a girl who did one WhatsApp message, and now she's going to be in front of dozens, hundreds of people internationally off one WhatsApp message. You guys like to know how to do that? Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just by the way, like you guys don't know
I'll at
me,
least
some of you
say
guys
yes.
know me. I have very, very low self-esteem. So if you don't want to see tears and my self-esteem lowering, like I love like Johnny, he's like helps my self-esteem by like being here, right? But the biggest issue with getting referrals and cold outreach is offering them shit that they don't freaking want. If you're fishing, you can't fish with strawberries because you like strawberries. It doesn't work. I don't eat many worms, right? But that's what fish seem to like is worms, right? When I was a young boy, we had a little pond, and we also had a chicken house. So we worked a lot, right? We'd kill chickens, right? And I'd gut them and everything, but we'd have these chicken livers left over, and I would take them down to the pond and go fishing. And the only thing I would ever catch is catfish, right? Because I was using dead stuff like catfish are like the buzzards of the sea, right? Like, or the buzzards of the pond. I didn't get that at the time. One day my dad comes down, and he always had this magical tackle box. Like I didn't understand like what it was, right? But he had tackle in there, right? And he had this one that looked like a silver spoon, right? And I think it was called a Johnson silver spoon, but he threw that in the pond. And within minutes, he caught this big old bass, like way bigger than I'd ever caught, and a bass, which is way better eating than catfish, right? Like, and I'm like, Dad, I didn't even know there was bass up here. He's like, well, son, like catfish like dead stuff. Bass only hit on live stuff, right? They think this is live. Same thing. So if you're doing outreach, or you're trying to do referrals and stuff, and you keep getting shut down, right? It's because you're offering shit that they don't want, right? Does that help a little bit? We're going to go a little bit more detail on that, right? So the biggest challenge with offering what they want is you have to think like them, right? And you have to put yourself in their shoes, which sometimes if you have I think women are better at this than men are. You have to have an amount of empathy, right? So I'm in touch with my woman side when my feminine side, right? So if I'm a hot tub guy or a roofer, I have to get in their world. What is it like? What do they want to happen on their day to day? I'm going to take a little break here and get a drink. What if you, let's just say you're a roofing guy, you're running a pretty big company, you're not out on calls, you're pretty much in the office, right? You might take some calls, but what are you thinking about on a day-to-day basis? Less door knocking, more appointment, more sales. That's not bad, Matt, but that's probably not the way that they think, right? Because why are they doing door knocking? Because it's working for them, right? On some level, right? I'm not saying they don't want to do less for it, right? More roofs. It could be. And these assumptions are ones we want to check. If you keep saying more roofs, more roofs, more roofs, and they're not responding, that's not what they want, right? Like for dentists, like I've worked with a lot of people who do dental marketing, and they're like, oh, let's get more patients. They don't want more patients. They really don't. They don't want more patients. It just blows people like, what? What do you mean they don't want more patients? When I was working with restaurants, they don't want more bodies either, not as much as they want something else. Restaurants want carry-out orders. Why do they want carry-out orders? They'd much rather have carry-out orders, right? Because an office will call with like 30 carry-out orders. Bam, bam, right? So when I change my talking to them, like, hey, do you guys do carry-out orders? Yeah, we do carry-out. How big of order can you handle? Like we can work like however size you want, right? Boom, now I'm in there. Does that make sense? You guys, right? But when I was like, hey, are you guys working with any marketers to help you get more? Like, blah, hang up the phone, dead side. Those are the ones I'm gonna need to send 100 cold outreach emails or 100 whatevers. It's going to be bloody. It's going to be bloody, right? Like I know a lot of people teaching cold outreach say it's all a numbers game. Like again, I'm not trying to work that damn hard, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to look for somebody who's going to be a 6-figure or $1 million client, right? And I'd rather reach out to 10 people and get on 7 or 8 calls, right? Does that make sense? And then do what we call a couple first dates, right? I'd much rather do that, right? Than just blast a bunch of databases, right? On that kind of thing, right?
Well, this might be a good segue into a little bit about how this is working, Travis, to give you a little bit of an overview.
Yep.
And we're doing this. I'll share my screen anyway. Can we have a bit of a look at it, right? So can you see my screen, everyone?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, cool. So we started working with a debt client this week, right? A lot of you will be familiar with debt consolidation and how they help people write off their debts and all that type of stuff. And these people buy thousands of leads, hundreds and thousands of leads per year. And I've worked with these guys in the past, and I called them up and I said, listen, how's things going? They said, oh, it's good, but there's just no margin. There's no margin in the debt game anymore. We've got to pay our staff, like the cost of salaries have gone through the roof, Dan. And the cost of the leads have gone up as well because Google's raising their prices or whatever. And there's just no margin. And everywhere, every debt company I'm hearing is saying, debt is dead. The game's over. Like we need to move on to something else, which usually for me is a sign that there's a really good point to drill home with these guys and a really good opportunity for everyone, right? So what I said to him was, well, what if we can take some of the leads that your sales team don't have the time to call back or because you're understaffed? What happens if we take some of those leads and we work them and qualify them and send them back ready for you guys? Or we could even take some of the leads that your sales team can't cope with, so you can maybe get rid of a few of them and send them back over to you so you can be more efficient and get some of that margin back. And this is what we've done this week, right? So they've given us a database of 400 of their leads. And what we've managed to do with the Sleeping Beauty Android is move them from someone that hasn't picked up the phone, that has been called 3 or 4 times by their sales agents. And we've sent out a simple SMS. We call it the Prince Charming Kiss of Life SMS. And I'll run through that with you in a sec, Travis. And what happens, as we've seen here, and we're getting paid about £50 per appointment that we send back to these guys, right? So out of about 400 leads, we sent, it's about 400. So we had sent 400 SMSs out, and we've moved all of these people from lead responded to qualified to call now or to schedule back, right? So we've had 40 leads that have gone back to the client, and we're getting paid about £50, about $50 per appointment, which means that we've taken some data that they've essentially given up on and been able to introduce them back to the client, and we're getting paid per appointment. And this is kind of what we're teaching in the program, right? So my point is that there's, what you're saying, Travis, if we're able to approach these people with something different than just more debt leads, which they're already buying, which is already too expensive for them, which is already not working for them because their costs are too high. The way I approach it is, well, maybe we can save some money with your sales agents, and maybe we can take the load off them and just send them the leads which are already pre-qualified, which is going to save them time. And you know what he said to me this week? He said, I think what we'll start doing is sending these leads to you first before we hand them to the sales agents. So I can cut the sales agents teams down from 10 to 3 or whatever, which I feel kind of a little bit bad about, right? Because this is all AI. But it's kind of happening. Do you know what I mean? It's happening in front of our eyes at the moment.
Well, it's got to happen. If they're saying that we got to be out of this business, so they're going to go out of business or they're going to figure out their margins, right? That's the only thing they can do.
There's no margins left in this market for them, so they have to find ways. And I wanted to, because there's people on this call that haven't seen what we're doing here, and I wanted to show you as well, right? So the way that we get coffee dates, Travis, and I might be jumping the gun a little bit here, is we want to get the client to experience our Sleeping Beauty Android, right? Like what it's doing for them and how it's going to work.
Yeah.
And I've always found that, I'm not very good at kind of like selling, on a phone call or anything like that. I kind of clamor up and I jumble my words and I'm pretty crap at it, right? But when I'm able to show them how it works and let the kind of asset do the selling for me, I don't have to really say anything. I can't really mess it up. You know what I mean? So what we do to jump on a call with these guys, I'm going to show you here what this looks like. So we have what we call you call this a hand raiser, right? We call this the Prince Charming SMS.
Yeah.
And I'm pretend you're the client here for a moment, okay? That's doing hot tubs. All right. So the SMS we sent it is, hi, it's Kelly from Sarasota Hot Tubs. Is that the same Travis who was looking for a hot tub a few days ago? Okay. And what would you say back to that if it was you, if you decided to respond?
Yeah, that was me.
Yes, that was me. And this is the demo that we're showing the client.
Yeah.
Hopefully this works. Okay. Thank goodness I had you on a post-it note stuck to my computer to give you a call, but I didn't want to disturb you without checking first. Are you still looking? And these 1-2 punch messages that I've just shown you here are getting a 30% response rate on average. Sometimes it's way more from a list that is dead, and this has all been done by SMS.
Yeah. So this is genius. I call these IOIs. You get an indicator of interest first before you go in, right? So you want to get a head nod and and get the conversation rolling first, right? Perfect. Yep. I love it. Yeah.
So what would you say after that?
Yeah, I'm still looking. Yeah.
Try and break it if you want. Yeah, I am still looking. Still looking. So I'll get the client to be kind of running through this.
Yeah.
This is OpenAI Playground, by the way. Brilliant. Is this for a new hot tub or to replace an existing one? So this is the AI. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
What do you say?
It's a brand new hot tub.
Brand new one. Top-notch choice. Just so you know, we can help you out with that and we'll beat any market price. Fancy scheduling a call back to get into the nitty-gritty? Sure. Okay. Well, let's play with it. I'm not sure just yet.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Do you offer?
I'm easy, man.
Yeah, you're too easy. Do you offer finance? I'm a bit stressed out with cash flow at the moment.
Yeah.
Right now. Absolutely. We've got flexible finance options that can ease those cash flow worries. How about we chat through the details and find a plan that suits you? Shall we set up a call? Yes. Okay, then. Okay, you got me. Okay, you got me. All right, and then here's the calendar link, and that's all booked in for you, right? Um, this is the OpenAI playground, and what we do is really clever here. We've got this kind of plugin called StyleBot, which gets rid of the prompt. So if we remove this, we're able to see what the prompt is, right? And this is I don't know how much you know about AI, Travis, but this is the instructions for the Sleeping Beauty Android.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the training is on the challenger sale type. We've got everything built in here. We are Sarasota hot tubs. And these are all the instructions, right? This is our IP, and we don't want to show that to the client. And that's kind of how it works, right? The good thing is as well that AI is getting smart enough to be able to send people straight to the calendar without having to book the calendar link. So, say for example, if the client's got a dialer or it's got a sales team that just works off kind of people coming through the CRM, we're able to slot them in quickly for an immediate dial back, a call back, or a kind of live transfer. And these are the results. Do you know what I mean? Like from
That's awesome.
400 SMS outreaches, we've had 40 appointments booked. And that's from leads they thought were dead, right? So when we're able to kind of show them this and let them experience it, it's a much easier kind of sell once we get them onto coffee date. And that's really what I wanted to continue on with you. But I thought it was a good idea to show you what we're kind of doing here at the moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the way I word it is like, so we go do coffee dates and first dates, right? But there's no better thing to sell than a demonstration. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. I say demonstration's worth 1,000 pictures, right? So like even in my back in agency thing, we have a coffee date and we never get married first. We say, hey, let's run a test, right? It's kind of what you're doing. And by the way, like I'm not saying you guys have to do it this way, but like we only get paid on the results, right? So it's really easy for us to say yes, for them to say yes on a first date. And then the first date's just as much for us as it is for them, right? Like, are they going to try to tell me what to do all the time? Like, are they going to, are they going to pay? How fast do they pay? Am I chasing for my payments? Like all those things, right? And then once those work out, then we can go steady. That's I know it's old. I'm showing my age. We can go steady, or we become an item or whatever, right? Or get married, right? Like beyond that point. But yeah, the best thing to do is once you get past what they want, you still have to find out what they want, right? A roofer, like wants the phone to ring. Like if you're in the roofer, he wants the phone to ring. He probably wants more commercial jobs than he does residential jobs. What they hate is when they find out competition got a commercial job that they didn't even get a chance to bid on. I didn't even know that, right? But these people are probably in their database, right? Like I don't know, but too many people own a commercial place that don't own a home too, or have a house, right? So sometimes the best place to start, if you're looking for commercial, is with your list of residential, right? Does that make sense? Like, hey,
yeah,
thank you so much. Like, hey, I don't want to change what you're doing, right? But thank you so much for letting us put the roof on your house against a customer, right? Last fall, do you own a business here in town, right? Like, but they just never think to do that kind of stuff. And of course, you could do that with you may not have that set up on your AI, but it's the same kind of principles, right?
Yeah. If those roofers have 1,000 people on their database that have bought and are old customers, then you could easily send out something, ask if they own a business, right? And maybe
that's right.
20% of them will. So you could do the same hand raiser, right? Is this Joe from wherever? Do you own a business? Type of thing. So that will work well. I think with the debt company that we had, the thing that got him was when I was able to explain that we were able to remove his reliance on his sales staff and increase the margin of his business. That's what kind of got him hooked. And I'll tell you what got really exciting for me afterwards was when I took that screenshot that I just showed you, okay, and did a little Loom video and sent it to 4 or 5 other debt companies. Do you know how quickly they got back to me and said, let's do something, right? So all you kind of need is that first case study with what's working. I guess you'd call that referral mojo. I don't know how you do it, but like it's just
we'll
common
talk
sense.
about that here if folks are into it. But
Yeah.
So, but yeah, totally. But the big thing is like, I don't care if you're doing onesie, twosie outreach, or even if you bump into somebody at a, I think Andre's here. He bumped into somebody at an airport, right? Andre does solar down in South Africa, right? He bumped into somebody in an airport, and that's might work out to be a really big deal with a lot of other solar companies, right? But you still have to know what they want. That's always the first step. What is it that they want, right? And it could be different. Like a lot of roofers. I remember I had somebody I was helping. His name was Lathan. It was several years ago. He ended up doing Beamer style deals for all of his roofing clients. He would get 8%. I don't remember if it was how he exactly had it structured, right? But the big thing for them is there was some type of chemical they wanted to put on, some kind of sealer that they wanted to put on, right? And because it's high margin, right? Almost every single business has something that's high margin that they would rather be selling more of, right? Dentists want to sell implants because it's like $25,000, $30,000, $50,000 a case, right? They call it cases, right? So they want to sell implants. They don't want more teeth whitening. They don't, saying like, hey, are you hungry? I got food is not the same thing as knowing that, I'm making up shit, but that knowing that Ron, loves a good Australian Wagyu steak, right? Like, or if I don't know that he's vegan, it doesn't matter, right? So we want to be more specific. It always starts with knowing what they want, right? I had a guy that did run his whole business off cold stuff, and he worked with designers, interior designers, right? And he's like, Travis, like I email them cold and I get like 80-90% responses, and I close half of the deals on there because he knew exactly what they wanted. I don't know if you guys are interior designers, but at the time there's like a listing service for interior designers called House. I don't know how you spell it. It was called House. And all they cared about is like, most of their business came from House. So all they were focused on was like, how do I get more people to see my house listing? So that was his email. Say, hey, I saw your house listing up in Alabama, right? Like, yeah, that's me. They didn't know if he's a customer or what, right? Do you need more visitors to your houses? And yes, I do, right? Like, again, indicator of interest, right? And you would close those deals to get those done, but knowing what they want, right, is the biggest part of that.
I think Rachel was just asking, you're asking what the clients want, not or the consumer. I think you're talking about the clients here, right? Do they want
clients or even the people? Like it's the same thing. If you're talking to a human, you have to know what they want first, right? The reason Danson's work so good is they already expressed interest in what they wanted, which was the hot tub for whatever reason, right? And so when you say, hey, are you still looking for a hot tub? They're like, yeah, I'm still looking, right? Does that make sense? Right?
Yeah.
Because you have recency, right? And guess who's going to be, so if you're running a test, run people that just recently came in recently, you're going to do better than somebody that came in 2 years ago. Does that make sense? Right. So Dan is ethically cheating in a way because he already knows what they want. They've already expressed interest in what they wanted, if that makes sense.
I think that's important as well for people. Well, there's a few things, the questions that people have been asking before this call, right? The first one is pricing and how much we can charge. And the second one is, what type of data should we kind of get hold of, right? And I've learned the hard way. Like I've got old data that's like 2 years old, and I've ran the Prince Charming to it, and we got about 15% response rate, not much love. But these debt guys, they said, I want to give you 1 day old data after they've been dialed and our team's finished with them. Then you can have them do what you want because they're almost dead to us now, right? And that went nuts there. I want to talk a little bit about charging as well, right? And how much we can charge. Well, what I would recommend doing and what we do is 100% performance deal as well. We absorb the SMS costs, we absorb the OpenAI costs and the Zapier costs, and we just send them appointments or whatever. And then that we take 50% of what their sales commission is, right? So whether let's say they're a solar company and they're charging 10K for their solar panels, there's probably about a $4,000 margin on those solar panels, and we would look to take half of that amount. Right? I know it sounds a little bit hard to do, but they will pay it. But a lot of the times, what they'll do is they'll anchor back to an earlier point in the sales process, which we want to get paid on, right? So rather than wait 3 months to get paid on the 50% of the 4K, we want to work back and figure out what percentage of people go from appointment to sale to finance or whatever. So we want to get paid per appointment there if we can. So it's just a matter of negotiating and common sense with your clients, if that makes sense.
Well, what's genius in what you're doing, and this, I wish somebody would have told me this when I was younger. There's only 3 ways to make money. You can sell your time, you can sell a product, or you can rent something out, right? Selling your time, we all know that's kind of like, it's tough, right? Selling a product is still tough because you still have to go, you have to buy your product cheap. You have to do a bunch of stuff to it, and people are going to grind you down on the price. Of course, a lot of people have made wonderful fortunes, but it's a very small percentage. A much easier way to do it is to rent something out. And what you're basically doing when you're renting out these Androids is you can get a hold of something once, maybe make some tweaks to it, and you can rent it over and over and over again. So it matters less how much they give you and more that how many renters do you have for it, right? Again, I'm not trying to work real hard, right? Just pay me money regular, right? Like, matter of fact, renting is a way better model, right? Because when I'm running the back-end agency model, what I'm really doing is I'm renting out my marketing. I'm renting out my intellectual property. I never tell it to them that way because they're not interested in that, right? And nobody's really like, I have my guy redoing a pool liner for me here, right? I just was curious if he had ever heard of ChatGPT, right? Like, have you heard of Chat? Like, oh, I've heard of it, right? But he's like not interested in it at all, right? Like, that's not what they're into. And some of these smaller guys, the last thing they really want is more people, right? But you have to understand what they want. So I'm going to give you guys a kind of an exercise, a little chance for a break for me. If we got time, it won't take very long. I'll try to throw something at you. There was a real life example, right? But you guys may not have dealt with it. So I work with a girl who did email marketing for independent wineries in Canada, right? And when she started her agency, like she couldn't get any response. Like I can't remember. There's several hundred like independent wineries up in that region, right? She's like, Travis, like I can't get any response, right? Because nobody wanted email marketing. Like an independent winery in Canada, it's probably true of an independent winery, right? They don't want email marketing. Even saying the word marketing, right? Unless they just happen to have a marketing meeting saying, oh, we got to have a market. That's what happens with our cold outreach sometimes. We just happen to get lucky. Like they just had a meeting. Somebody, oh my God, you got to get a marketer, right? We got to give you some marketing here. And we just get lucky, right? But I'm not expecting you guys to know what an independent winery wants. But what I'm going to ask you is, how would I find this information out? What are some ways I would find this out? How would I find out what a hot button for an independent, somebody that owns an independent winery is? It's not a big company, but how would I find out what a hot button is? Anybody got their brave pants on? Go on forums. Okay. Ask the right questions. Okay. Speaking with them, Reddit. Perfect. Have a chat with them directly. Perfect. So one conversation, like you could say, hey, I'd like to do an interview with you. Somebody like, what are your challenges up there? I like that, and that can work. Let's say like we didn't want to talk to somebody, and I do believe in talking to people, but let's say we didn't want to talk to somebody. What's another way that we could find out what a winery, what does an independent winery want?
I want wine tastings.
I know this story, so I'm not going to interrupt.
Yeah. Somebody said it, but how do we know that, right? What's a way that we could find out? You guys got the groups, ask ChatGPT, right? So here's one easy way, and this almost always works. almost every industry has a trade magazine or multiple trade magazines, or they have multiple organizations, right? So one of the things you can do is find independent winery trade magazine. They also have conventions, right? So you can go into those trade magazines and look at their articles and then look who's advertising. What are the things, what are the hot buttons they're pushing there, right? It's probably going to make a good hot button in their language, right? That you could reach out to them, right? Independent wineries happen to be like they're if you're running, I don't know what all a vineyard person does, or I don't even know what you call them, right? But like most of their business is not done like they don't run big TV commercials. What they do is they have small, intimate wine tastings. Most of their business is done with wine tastings, right? So what they're really, really interested is, how do I get more people to my wine tastings, right? So when I had this girl modify, like, hey, do you do wine tastings? Yeah, of course we do wine tastings, right? Like, are you usually overbooked for your wine tastings? Or you got more room? I got more room. Like, hey, I help independent wineries up in that region get more wine tastings. Would you be open to discussing that, right? Or hey, I can, like if you have, we'll talk about this here in a minute, but even something better than just saying, hey, let's book a call. Like, what would be an interim step that would add some value to that, right? So you can say, hey, I'm putting together a little Zoom for 4 or 5 independent wineries there. Would you like to come to that? And you get them on the email list, or you could do a little training for them, or whatever you want to do, put them in a group. One of the biggest SaaS groups, I'm going to take a credit for all of his success. One of the biggest SaaS groups on Facebook, and I haven't really looked, so he might not be the biggest one, but it's like 21,000 people in this SaaS group, started from zero. And what he was doing was he's doing cold outreach, but instead of saying, hey, let's book a call, he was saying, hey, I put together a SaaS group, or a group for founders, right? You're one of the biggest ones in this industry. It'd be kind of a shame not to have you there. Would you like a link to it, right? And he just automated that, right? And built that group up, and then the group kind of grew on its own. Does that make sense? Now you can go in that group, and it's a stock pond. You can go in there and pull out people anytime that he wants. Does that make sense? And it doesn't delay. So people are like, oh, I don't have that much time. It doesn't take long. As soon as they get in the group, you're like, hey, thanks for joining the group. And then you can, would you like to book a call kind of thing, right? But now we've moved that. We got indicators of interest, and we've moved that relationship a little bit forward, right? Same thing if you're fishing, right? Like I used to do fishing. Like as soon as that bobber would go down, if I yanked too hard, right, it would yank it right out of its mouth. Like I let it have it a little bit, let it take off with a little bit, right? And then do a little set and then reel it in. Does that make sense? I don't want to use our clients like they're fish, right? But it's all the same principles there. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
whether you're looking for people to rent your Androids to, right, or their people, you still have to figure out what it is that their people want, right? Like, and Dan's got a lot of that taken care of for you because he's already got the IP and stuff in there, right? So.
But Travis, to put you on the spot, right? Because a lot of people, I think someone's here said, I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, tell me, what should I do for something like solar or a service-based industry? I know you've got to understand the market a little bit more, but if you had to guess about how you could open the door to some conversations to sell them database reactivation, any ideas? What that would look like? I wouldn't
try to sell them database reactivation. I find out what they want, and then how the database reactivation can help them with that. Right.
Yeah.
So
like
they
more commercial deals.
They may want to enter into a new market, right? They may want to expand the market that they're in. Maybe they're doing it for residential, and they want to do it for commercial accounts. But I would do the same. I would find trade magazines. I know Andre's in solar. Do they have solar conventions, Andre? Do they have so you can look at and see what topics are going to be at those solar conventions. You can also look at the booths, which becomes multi-million-dollar valuable, and when I share with you what I'm going to share with you here in a minute. But so that's where I would go, right? I would go
batteries. A lot of them are upselling battery packs now. So
batteries,
especially in South Africa,
people love maintenance contracts, like because why? Because it's high margin. So one of the questions you can ask, like if you go into solar, like Andre, like what would you like to be selling more of? What kind of things, what products are so easy for you to sell, and there's a lot of great margins on them?
Yeah, well, because we've got power outages every day, people do need batteries, and they also do need solar to charge the batteries because energy is expensive. But just touching on your point, most folks don't just want to, get on a call to discuss a quote, or that's usually a bit too fast. So I like the idea of maybe doing like a weekly AMA, or maybe a group or something that's already happening, that they could just like join in on a weekly basis instead
Yeah, I'm
of.
just asking you as a person that sells in your solar business, what do you wish you could sell more of? What has the highest margins for
Yeah,
you?
basically like a full hybrid system.
Okay, what is that? So here's where I just play stupid. I really don't know what that means, right? What does that mean? Why is a full hybrid system? Why would you rather sell more of those?
That means that you've got constant power day and night, no matter what's happening.
And why do you like to install those? What's the benefits to your company?
I think it's the highest ticket deals.
Perfect.
Um,
So that's
yeah,
so if I were to reach out to people and say, hey, um, would you like to be booking more hybrid? I would use the exact words hybrid. So anybody, they may say it different in South Africa than they do somewhere else. I'm probably going to get a lot better response, right? Than if I just said, hey, do you need to book more
More leads.
appointments, right? Right.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Um, Now, why do your customers, the customers that why do your customers, what's the biggest thing they tell you why they want to get it done?
they don't want the lights to go off every day and night, and not able to
Who
cook
who would be
food.
most affected? Who would be most affected if the lights went off
It's
or they
usually
lost
families.
power? Was that
It's usually like small family homes, um, parents and kids. Um,
so kids? What if they had somebody elderly on some electrical machines, right?
that's also a big one. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, like we want to look for those kind of things. This is not in a service based industry, but I'm hoping somebody is a coach that helps people with um, uh, like overwhelm, right? But like that's too broad, right? Like what kind of issues do they have when they have overwhelm, but they miss deadlines, right? Who's going to be most effective? They miss a deadline. Well, probably CEOs, right? Those kind of things, right? So, but he can do this whole thing off. Hey, are you missing deadlines? Are you stressed that Are you stressed out? Is it leading to health issues? Right? That's the other thing. Like as much as we want our marketing to be awesome, like most people don't do anything until they start having some type of trigger points. So we want to find those trigger points, right? Hey, are you having stress? Yes, I am. Is it leading to health issues? Right? I just got put on blood pressure medicine. Right? Like, is this something you want to fix now? Or is this a later kind of thing? Right? These are the kind of things we want to figure out for those trigger points. Does that make sense? That's going to take us from sending out 100 messages and getting 2 responses to sending out like figuring out like what these people want. What's 10 and getting on 9 calls and then giving them a demo, right? Once we get on the call, figuring out what it is that they want, right? But we have to assume that nobody wants customer reactivation, right?
No.
Um,
What they want is a solar guy would want probably a battery pack because A, it's got good margin, and B, it's like a no-brainer sale, right? Like if they're on an appointment with someone, like it's
yeah.
bish bash bosh, they've made the sale. It's like an easy offer for the client to say yes to, especially if they've already got solar panels, right? So if you're able to go in at that angle and find out what that angle is for your niche, then I suspect it's going to open a few doors, right?
So
I
do you want
like
to
it.
talk a little bit about Referral Mojo a little bit, Dan?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I kind of want to add at the moment. Um, Pricing. Let's talk about pricing a little bit more, right? And how, I mean, I'll talk about how I negotiated this deal
Yeah.
with this debt client, for example, and then maybe you can talk a little bit about your stuff, right? But I know because I know the market and I've known it for quite some time. What they usually do is they buy in package cases from what they call packages, who generate the leads themselves, jump on the call, and close the lead, right? And usually they buy that package lead for about £800 or £900, right? So I know that they've got a cost per acquisition, but I know they also buy leads, right? So if they're happy to pay that much per package case, and I know that they're buying leads for a certain amount of money, then I was able to kind of just talk to them. I said, like, listen, I know you spend about that much on a package case. What would you be comfortable with paying on a performance deal, where we take care of all of the marketing, all of the appointment setting, and we just drop it into your sales team? And he just said, well, I don't know, we're happy to pay this. We've got to pay the lead gen guys. How about we say £200 per package case, right? And I was like, no worries, because the thing is that there's no risk for me. Like, it's a 100% performance deal, base deal for them. There's no risk for me. All I've got to do is send a few SMSs out and cover the cost of the SMSs. And the Android does all the work. So it was music to my ears when he was able to give me that kind of a deal. And it was a no-brainer. And what people are also asking is how you measure this with the client, right? And maybe you can chime on this as well later, Travis. But in this day and age, all clients that you want to kind of work with that have a decent size list and database will have a CRM, right? And when we send the lead back to the CRM, we can pull through a source that says it comes from Flexible, right? And then you can track the lifetime journey of that lead, and you can see when it moves from lead to appointment to pack out to sale, right? And they're able to send that data back to us on a daily basis. I just said, we need full transparency here. If you can send that a daily report of what's happening, then I'm happy with that. You know what I mean? And people often say to me, Dan, like, how do you trust these clients? Like, that's never going to happen. They're going to rip you off, right? And from my experience is that that's never the case. It never has been once for me, because we have to understand here that what we're offering them is more valuable than what they're offering us, right? They don't want to lose us. We're offering them a huge solution here. And, you know, back in the day when I was selling retainer contracts, I was an expense to them. But when I'm doing this type of stuff for them, they're inviting me to golf trips. They're inviting me out to steak dinners. They're wanting to take my team out. They're coming down. You know, it's a completely different relationship, right? So you have to trust me with the fact that you're not wanting to go into business with partners that are sleazebags and you've got a bad feeling about it, right? You just say no to them straight away. You want to get into bed with companies that you see a long-term relationship with, that are super hungry and successful, and they have a dev team or whatever that just wants to get this going, right? Because they're hungry for solving a problem, which is, as I was saying before, low margins and high kind of overhead costs.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how quickly this company got back to me and got it all set up. It was up and done in a couple of days. So transparency, working with good partners is not like, you got to make some good decisions on partners, right? And you can usually tell that with your gut and how they kind of respond when you're talking to them on the coffee date. But for me, tracking payment is they're more than happy to pay me. I invoice my clients every Monday with, you know, the amount that I'm due, and they pay on that same day. There's no problems whatsoever. So don't worry about transparency. And price is really just a negotiation. They'll usually come to you with what they think is a fair price. And most of the time I just go, yeah, you know, that sounds good to me, because I haven't got anything to lose. You know, I like your stuff, Beamer, right? You got to hire the tappers, and you got to hire your staff to do all of the back and forth and closing the sale. We don't have any of that. We have ChatGPT to do the work for us. So it's the closest thing to kind of passive income that I've kind of.
Yeah, you're renting something. It's the best.
Yeah.
And it's not like a house where you have to keep getting more houses, right? So it's one of the, again, I wish somebody would told me this after I got out of high school, right? I wouldn't have to work so damn hard, right? But it is what it is, and I got some lessons out of that. But yeah, that's fantastic. And I have the same experience with you. I've been doing deals like these where people pay me after since 2014, maybe late 2014, 2015. I've never had anybody not pay me. Now, I had some slow pays during COVID, right? I did have some slow pays, but people always pay me. When you look at most business, that's how most business is done. We go to a restaurant, like if we go sit down, we usually pay after we have the meal, right? The guy just spent a week over here putting a pool liner in. He's going to send me a bill afterwards. Now I paid for the supplies, so he didn't have to come out of pocket for the supplies and the pool liner, but like he's going to bill me afterwards, right? That's kind of way business is done. It's way easier to kind of like take the risk out for them, right? I'm not saying nobody's ever going to get screwed, but if you do it kind of like Dan's showing you and just do small things first, you look at how it goes on that coffee date and that first date, like and they're gonna, like, if the leads are turning into sales for them, they're not going to want to stop, right? Like that's kind of the thing.
Exactly. And I forgot to show you this, right? So this is a real example. You know how you went through the demo before, right? So I'm going to read this out to you. So hi, it's Kelly. So we give their salesperson, like we can call it Sarah or Tom or whoever. We give it a kind of fake name that's not one of their salespeople. Hi, it's Kelly from the name of the company. Is that the same Abigail who wanted help with their debt a couple of days ago? You didn't get back. A few minutes later, just bumping this message in case you got busy before. Smiley. It is, yes. Sorry, I haven't called, been dealing with a poorly baby. Can I give you a call tomorrow? Thank goodness, my calendar just pinged me to give you a call. I didn't want to disturb you. Are you still looking? I am, yes. I just wanted to hear from one debt later today. Then I'll have a full picture tomorrow to go through. Great. So here you're getting steps to a full picture. Could you tell me how much your biggest debt is? I'll just call you if that's easy. This number? Absolutely. You can give us a ring on this number. However, to make sure we can assist you effectively, could you share what you've tried so far to reduce your debt? And this is all AI.
Yeah.
I've cleared the majority of my debt by setting up plans before I go on maternity leave. I only have approximately 2K left. However, I've made other plans, but a debt recovery agent is refusing what I have in place. That's a proactive approach. Well done, blah, 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 blah. Would you like to schedule a call? Yes, that's fine. Brilliant. What time would be best for you? Anytime is good. And when we get the AI to trigger that lead to be sent back over to the client at this point here. Do you know what I mean? And I'll tell you one thing that we have added, and I wasn't going to share it today, but I'm going to see if I can find this here. It's all over right, where is it? That's not it. And I was speaking to you about this, Travis. So when they say they want a call back, and by the way, this is working an absolute charm. Client that I was speaking to said that only because it's the debt market, only 20% of the customers actually pick up the phone because they're being chased by debt collectors. So what we did, I said, one thing, Sarah, I've booked you in with Ray. She is one of those ladies that loves helping people. She has a huge heart, but because of this, she is very busy with folks reaching out all the time. I don't want to lose the chance to chat with her. She is brilliant. I've asked her to call you between 3 and 3:05 p.m. Can I count on you? What happens then is that they get back with and this is all done by AI as well. They get back with a positive response, and we've given some personality, and we've also put in some commitment within this last message. And this stuff blows away the client. You know what I mean? They've gone from having 20% callback rates to triple that overnight with a little bit of copy and a little bit of understanding of what the consumer kind of wants. Do you know what I mean? So that type of stuff is how we can add value to the clients as well.
Yeah.
Where were we? I think that's about it. Let's get on to the referral stuff, hey?
Cool. So again, staying with the same Jabba the Hutt theme, right? The getting in touch with my Jabba the Hutt, like I don't want to do very much, right? I know it's not very pretty. It's like, I don't want to work that hard, right? I don't want to like to reach out. Would you guys like to reach out to one person and get dozens or hundreds or thousands of introductions off of one? Like, it took me a long time to figure this out. The first time I did it, I was actually working with a client. She did reputation management, and she specialized. Does everybody know what reputation management is? Basically, if you get bad stuff on if you're a business and you get bad stuff, like it'll show up on that first page and it kind of kills their business, right? But she did reputation management for auto dealers, right? And so she would basically cold call auto dealers, and she was doing pretty good, right? She'd cold call all auto dealers, but man, it was a grind. Like call, go over, book a call, do whatever. It was just a grind. And I'm like, there is somebody that has an economic benefit, right, to these auto dealers doing well. There's actually quite a few people, but one of them just came to mind right away. Was an organization that charges big fees, depending on how big the business is, called the National Automobile Dealers Association or something like the National American Automobile, something like that, NADA, NADA, right? So instead of reaching out to 10 or 20 or 30, and trying to go through, find who's the owner of this automobile dealer and that automobile dealer and doing all those conversations, one message to the local NADA there said, hey, do your dealers ever get bad reviews, right? Like, oh my God, all the time. Like it's terrible. Like, do they know how to get rid of them? Like, no. Like, would you guys be open if I did a training for all of your dealers, right, to show them what to do with those reviews? They're like, oh my God, yes, right? So they would send to all of their people, say, hey, we've got a person that's going to show you what to do with these bad reviews and how to get those off. So she would do a webinar. I think it was just GoToWebinar at the time. She would do a webinar for 10, 20, 30, 40 of these dealers all at the same time. She would show them everything, right? Do these videos. Here's how you want to do the video. You do this with the description. She would do all this stuff. And at the end of it, how many of these people do you think that really wanted to do it themselves?
Like
None.
None.
Right. But she's like, hey, if you want me to do it, like just reach out. And she would just crush it, right? One, they already trusted her. Why did they already trust her? Because Nada said so. Nada said, like, this is the girl, right? So they got their halo from that, right?
They endorsed her.
They endorsed her, right? They got an endorsement from that. So
That's
I've
really
been using this
interesting.
all throughout the years. I finally found there was a really smart insurance guy. His name is Walter Haley, and he kind of put a name to this. He called it NEER, NEER. And probably if you write this down, it'll probably make you $1 million or $2 million for every one of those letters that you put down. So if you only got enough energy to put down N, right, that'll probably make you $1 million. If you can put down NEER, you probably make about 4 million just from this, right? But naturally existing economic relationships. Naturally existing economic relationships. So let me show you how. This is a recent example. A girl I've got in that I mentor. I've been mentoring her for some time now. She runs martial arts schools. Now, of course, she's run ads to the martial arts schools. It's fine to run ads, right? She's also done cold outreach to the martial arts schools, right? But we were having a talk, and I'm like, who benefits if their jujitsu classes, if their Krav Maga classes are fuller, if they have more students, who's going to benefit economically from that? Well, a bunch of people will. But one of the things that was immediately on her mind was people that supply the uniforms, for them, right? So I just want to show you, I'm going to read this off to you. It's too hard to see, and I'm not fancy like Dan and sharing my screen. But this is something she did as she was, I think she was at her son's soccer game or something, right? It was a WhatsApp. Now, she also owns a martial arts school, right? But don't let that stop you. But she went to her supplier. She's like, hey, I was thinking, do you think you could help your clients add more students? If you could help your clients add more students, they would buy more merchandise from you, right? And she's very junior high, like, nothing's very few capitalized, right? He's like, yes. He's like, I can give a discount if they can get order through your reference, right? Because I'm not sure how we do it, but would it be possible to email your list of schools and see if we can help them grow? I'm happy to share a percentage with you also. I think we have a good relationship and reasons to work together. Yes, I will send details tomorrow. That was the response from them. So you get in front of lots of people, right? On that, Andre kind of bumped in. We were talking about this on a call. He bumped into somebody, like I asked him, like, who's providing all of your solar panels, or what's a big supplier, right? Just so happened to bump into him at an airport, right? He's got an economic relationship. Like the better his solar people do, the more solar panels he's going to sell, right? So Andre and him are in kind of a coffee date, first date situation right now, kind of just exploring what they can do with that, right?
Yeah.
So there's
go ahead, Dan.
Oh yeah, it just got me thinking. Right, another thing we could do is you'll find that some of these companies in certain niches have their own kind of CRM that's bespoke to those companies, right? Like in claims, there's a certain CRM that they have to use. And I think these CRMs get charged the more seats they have and the more leads that are going through it, right? So they charge the client that. So if you're able to talk to them, say, listen, we can help all of your clients grow about an introduction, that would work really well too.
Yeah. So kind of the thing is like, again, we're not trying to work so hard, right? I'm going to pick on somebody. Ron, do you own your own house, or maybe that's I shouldn't, like, what's some work you've recently had done on your house, or some work you've recently hired somebody out for?
We did some work on the back of the house, putting in some shade and some shading and some coverings.
Some like awning, was it like a handyman?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
Okay. So like, let's say you wanted to work with those guys, right? Because you paid him money. Like if you were to like email him and say, hey, I wanted to talk to you for a little bit, do you think he's going to like take your call? Absolutely, right? And then you could ask him, what we're looking for is, who does he pay? What payables does he have, right? Who's on his payable list, right? Who's he buying supplies from, right? He's paying them, because then we can say, oh, I buy them all from Acme Awning, right? I buy, like, that's where a lot of people get it from, Acme Awning, right? Hey, can you put me in touch with somebody over there at Acme Awning? And they're going to take his call. You know why they're going to take his call? Because that's the way the checks go. Does that make sense? That's the way the checks go, right? So it's like, oh, and then we have a situation like this. Hey, do you think if your customers were selling more, that they would order more awning material from you? Absolutely. Like maybe I could help them do that. Does that make sense? Kind of like the reputation management goes. So you can get, instead of doing it onesie twosie, you can follow the check stream, right? It works the other way too, but not quite as well. But if you're paying a check to somebody and they're paying a check to somebody and they're paying a check to somebody, you're gonna get, those aren't cold referrals. Those are warm referrals, and you can walk into dozens or hundreds or thousands of those all in one time. Here's another example. Like, this is a sales trainer, and he was really struggling as a sales trainer. Like, he was a sales trainer for everybody, right? He's like, yeah, this kind of sucks. It's hard to get sales gigs, right? Going out onesie twosie. Hey, do you guys need help with sales, right? Like, everybody's got that down, right? But he happened to like have a couple clients that were beauty salons. They were salons. So because they had those salons, he actually went to a beauty salon convention, like where all the beauty salon people go to like talk about the new products and all those kind of things, right? And he bumped into the Redken, which is what a very big like shampoo and conditioner and beauty supply thing. Bumped into the Redken the distributor there, right? And he was talking to the Redken distributor, right? He's like, well, I help companies like sell better. Like, one of the people I help is beauty salons. That's why I'm here. And the Redken's guy, like, man, I need your help. I've got thousands of distributors. And if I could get them to sales training, they could sell more product, right? Each of my salons does about 10,000 a year, right? If I can get them to, I got thousands of them, I get to sell 10% more, that's millions of dollars to my bottom line, right? Could I let people know about you? Can I let my distributors know about you? Would you help my people sell more rent? And he's like, absolutely. So that just blew him up, right? So again, like, how can we be? I know this is kind of gross, but I like to use gross things so it sticks in our mind. But how can we like grasp our inner Jabba the Hutt? Like, we didn't want to work so hard, but we want to like make a lot of money. We want to get a lot of things done with the least amount of effort. Like, how can we do that? And Referral Mojo is one of the ways to do that. Dan, I don't know if you have the Referral Mojo copy or not, but I'm happy to give it to you to give to your people if you want it.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I'm sure they would love that. Yeah.
But one of the things to do is to actually give them the copy. Like, if they're going to mail a letter, like give them the letters, right? Or the email copy, because every minute they have to spend thinking about it or doing it, like, you're delaying the process like by a day. And if it gets over 3 days, you're never going to do it. So you can kind of take charge and say, hey, great, I've already kind of written this down and got those intros. So one referral, right? This is how I drive. Dan asked me how I drove most of my business. Most of my business came from pay-per click or media buying agencies, right? They were driving lots of traffic and they knew they had lots of leads and they were selling their front end stuff, right? But they kept getting complaints like, hey, these leads aren't no good. Or, hey, like, we need more leads. We need leads cheaper, right? So when I reached out to them and said, hey, do your people ever tell you they need leads cheaper? Like, oh my God, yes, right? Or their stuff isn't converting and you know that the problem is the offer. Yes, oh my God, like, maybe I can help them out, right? Does that make sense? So that's where I got a lot. Instead of like reaching out one on one, I would just go to an agency, right, and get a bunch of deals all at the same time.
That's
right?
incredible. That's incredible. That's a light bulb moment for you right there, because I've actually done this with one of the paper leaders in my group. He has a brand called the Money Saving Advisors, and he has solar companies, he has mortgage, he has secured loans, he has debt, he has every niche under the sun. And the biggest problem he has is customer retention because of the quality of the leads, right? So if I can help his clients with the back end, he's going to refer me like crazy, because it means that he can charge more for his leads.
Yes.
And keep the customers longer. So
yes.
If you're listening to this and you know agencies and they don't know about this kind of Android stuff, then it's a really good opportunity for you to refer. And another thing that kind of popped into my mind while you were talking, Travis, is the review stuff, the reputation management, because that must be a hot button for a lot of these clients, right? The solar guys, the roofing guys, or whatever. They're not going to sit there all day and kind of review the 1 stars and all of that, but they're losing business because of it, right? And it's funny you spoke about this, because inside my program Roya, we have what we call a review android, which sits there and manages the 1 stars to 5-star reviews on the client's behalf with a click of a button. Right?
That's great.
So if like, it might be that's in,
yeah,
because guess what companies have a lot of, if they're getting a lot of reviews, right? They have a lot of leads. They have a lot of business. They're probably advertising. So sometimes going it at the right angle, I think does Terry Marshall call it the right angle marketing, right? It might be the foot in the door that's going to lead to bigger things as well. So yeah, it's powerful. It's powerful stuff, and it's really got my mind thinking about, those different angles. Stop trying to sell database reactivation.
You want plumbers? There's plumbing supply places. I got, even my little town of 30,000 people, we got a plumbing supply place. If I wanted to work with all the plumbers in the area, I would just go to that plumbing supply place and say, hey, you think if your plumbers like could sell bigger stuff and sell more and have more leads, and they would buy more plumbing supplies? Probably, yeah. Like, hey, why don't you invite them all down here for a day, right? I'll put on a class or send it out to your database, right? And then we can put on a Zoom, right? And then what I'm really doing is getting all their emails, right? Getting all their emails and all their contact info, right? So one deal, I'm not trying to be like overly hypey on the near being worth $1 million per letter. That's probably worth more than that, right? But if I want to get a hold of interior decorators, right, I'd probably go down to Vincent Electrical Supply place where they have all these fancy lights and different light fixtures, and I could do all kinds of business just from there's a place called Vincent Electrical Supply that supplies all the electricians and all the interior decorators and all that kind of stuff. So whatever business like you're trying to do, instead of going out onesie twosie, try to think about like, where could you get in front of 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, because every business pays somebody, right? Every business pays somebody, and they probably pay multiple somebodies, right? So those are all sources of warm referral leads for you guys.
I think another kind of referral, this is a little bit further down the line, is what happens when you start getting results for one client, right? One client is all you need. One client. Because there's something about like wanting to help as well. I think it's part of the human nature, right? Like if I get results for someone, the client's on the phone to me straight away, and we're celebrating together because we're partners, right? What does he want to do after he's got results from me? What does he? I mean, what do you think he wants to do? And can anyone answer the
So
question?
other people, as long as they're not his competition, right?
As long as he's not.
That's
Yeah,
right.
he wants to because he wants to be someone that's giving to someone else. He wants to be a good guy. He wants to be liked, right?
Yep.
So this is what happened, with this debt guy. I've had one of his mates, get this right. One of his mates has access to loan refusal data, and they call it a ping tree, right? So there's 10,000 leads that are being rejected each day for a loan, right? And he said he's got access to that data. His buddy down the road runs that business. He said we could plug the Android into those 10,000 leads per day. And I'm like, whoa, that's a little bit too big for me right now. Let's slow down a little bit. But he's immediately thinking of who he can refer, because he might want a little kickback as well, right? And I'm happy to do that. It's just about doing a deal. So there's plenty of opportunities as well once you get results for one client. If you just ask them if they know anyone else in their industry, for example, a solar guy, a lot of you might already have one solar client, right? Guess who they're in bed with, right? They're in bed with the roofers, because they have to install the solar panels, and I'm sure they've got a Rolodex of roofers that they're buddies with as well. So referrals good for cold traffic, but once you get that one client, you're kind of off to the races. And a lot of people on this call have already got a couple of clients. They just need to position what they're doing in the right way, right?
Yeah, the biggest thing I think we see with referrals, I think would be helpful, is like, people do this with me, like, hey, do you know anybody, whatever, right? Well, like, now I got to think, right? Again, I'm not trying to work so hard, right? Like, but if they say, hey, if you give it any of those trigger points, like, hey, do you know any martial arts schools that just opened up, right, and they need more students, right? If I'm that, oh yes, I do, right? Hey, would you, and then if they say, well, would you tell me who they are, right? Or would you, like, if you're expecting them to reach out, but give them the copy, right? It's better if it comes from them. Like, you can send a letter out, give them a letter. Hey, I've already drafted up a letter. You can tweak it a little bit if you want, just sign it, right? Like, any of those things. But the more stuff you can take out, the more referrals that you're going to get. Like, we expect them to do too much, right? And like, then you don't get the referrals, right? Well, you do get some, right? Because Dan's getting the referrals. But if you make it easier for them, right? Like, you'd be so surprised at how many more referrals that you get if you make it simple for them.
I'll tell you what's interesting as well, right, is because what you're talking about here, Travis, is so simple, right? It's not hard. But often, because we're in the traditional agency, the one that's running the ads, that's building the landing pages, that's writing the copy, that's doing the emails, that's doing the CRO split tests. They're so caught in the weeds that they don't have the headspace capacity to do these small things which make all the difference, right? So it's about, you can't have success with this type of offer that we're all running here without having the right headspace. And in order to have the right headspace, you have to have the right offer. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, they have to go together. So if you've got a good offer that doesn't require you to do anything apart from using the Android, it's going to free up your time to do deals, which is what this is all about, right? And I think that's why I'm so excited about, what we're doing here. It has had me excited for quite a few weeks now, as you know, Travis. So,
all they have to do, again, I just want to repoint this out. right? Because it's such a different business model. Like we're brought up to sell our time, right? Or if we're buying something cheap, doing something to it, and selling it at a higher margin, those are all three things, right? So we gotta buy all the time. Like if we're flipping houses, we've got to always be buying cheap, and then we got to fix them up, and then we got to sell them to somebody. What's a grind, right? The guys who do really, really well are the guys over time, are the people that rent houses, right? Now, that type of property comes with all kinds of time sucks, but renting out your Android, your sales Android, like you just tweak it. You've already got it. So you've eliminated the buy side, buying it cheap. The biggest thing in business is, how do I acquire something super cheap or free that other people want to pay me money for on an ongoing basis, right? And software is intellectual property. So you can acquire it. Well, it's like having a house that you just copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. Then your big thing is, how do I get renters in there, right? How do I get renters in there? And how do I make those long-term renters, right? How do I negotiate? And Dan's probably one of the best negotiators I've worked with. I've been doing this a while, but he's one of the best negotiators I've worked with, right? On how do I negotiate a balance between money and long-term, right? Because one of the worst things you could do is take too much money where it's not working for them, right? And then you could take too little money where it's not worth it for you, right? So you want to get those in there. But that's kind of the challenge now. It's like you've got this opportunity that I don't call it opportunity, but you've got this asset that Dan's put together where you can just go rent it out to people and not have to do all of the mind-boggling hours behind a Facebook ad manager or YouTube's ad manager trying to do all the back-end stuff. And I've been there. Like I've driven lots of traffic from media, right? But I'm always trying to look at, how can I eliminate something I have to do in my business, right? And Dan, your stuff is exciting to me too, because I think I could probably put a Android in. We'd have to tweak it a little bit for the higher ticket stuff. Once we've got it down, like we can qualify them and just send them over. We don't even do a call. We just send them to a Google document most of the time, right? And they still do. So we can just do that and eliminate all that. And again, it's another piece of the machine. Like the fewer pieces in the machine, the less problems you're going to have, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, sorry, Travis, keep going, mate.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So this doesn't just have to be for the, what is that document I had? It doesn't just have to be for the lead gen industries, right? So what happens, like I've got a good buddy who owns a big candle business, right? And I think he turns over $5 million a year. That's a lot of candles and a lot of pasta.
Anvil?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I'm just checking that I heard you right. Anvil, Anvil.
Candle.
Oh, candle. Okay,
candle
good.
business, right? Hey, it's Kelly from Brighton Candles. Is that the same Holly that bought a candle from us 2 months ago? You know when they can buy, because you can pull it from their CRM, right? Oh, that's interesting. Are you looking for another candle for Christmas? Question mark.
Dude,
Then send them the link to their candle page.
Yeah.
And share the profits from that. We're not just talking about lead gen industries here. We can do this in e-commerce.
Yeah.
I really believe we're onto something. It's quite a special time. It really is.
Yeah. Dude, I totally agree with you. Like I work with so many companies, again, they don't do anything with their customer list, right? I remember working with this is just one of the big ones that stood out. This guy had sold like 30,000 truck bed liners, right? And they weren't cheap ones. They were the more expensive ones, right? And he's really hurting for business. And I'm like, have you ever emailed your list and see if they want to buy another truck bed liner? You're like, why would they want to buy another one? It's like, it just stymies them. Like, there's 50 reasons why. Like, maybe they got a new truck. Maybe their son starts driving or their daughter starts driving, right? Maybe they want to trick it out. They want to pimp it out and have different ones, right? But like that crushed it. Like, oh my God, like, hey, are you interested in another color truck bed cover? Like, oh my gosh, right? Like, so again, like those assets that are just sitting there not being used, right? Those are at the 99-yard line already, right? And sometimes they're one inch away.
Exactly. Exactly. Question. If we want this Roya thing to work, if we want our Sleeping Beauty Android to work, right, and wake up the database, it doesn't really work if the client's only got 200 people in their database, right? You're probably better off emailing them individually.
It could if they have $1 million offer, right? And there
Well,
are people.
true.
So again, it's
True.
like, what's the size and the flow, right?
Yeah, the size. But let's say it's a $2,000 product and,
Yeah.
it's a prospect list, right? You don't really want to work with a 200
Right.
database. How would you, when we talk about cold outreach and referral mojo, have you got any ideas about how you would get bigger clients or bigger prospects with decent sized databases?
Well, the general assumption is the bigger clients are harder to get. And I found the exact opposite to be true. Because a 8-figure company who's having cash flow problems, right? Let's say they're making $1 million a month typically, and they're profitable by 50 or 100 grand a month. And then all of a sudden something stops working, or their supplier raises their prices, and now all of a sudden they're $50,000 in the hole every month. Has a much bigger problem when they're trying to play 10 people, and they're much faster to do stuff with than maybe a 6-figure. Like, I'm not beating up on my pool liner guy, but like if he has a bad month, he's just not going to take a big vacation. Like, it's not that big of a deal, right? So the bigger clients, now there is a certain level where you're going to have to get better at climbing through corporate. Like if you're going after $100 million company, you're going to have more corporate stuff. So there is that kind of like
Too big.
sweet spot, where you don't have to climb through a bunch of C-suite and hierarchy and all that kind of stuff, right? But so it's going to be depending on the business, right? But there's a lot of roofers that do 10 million plus that are still kind of small. One person's making the decisions, right? What I figured about roofers is you want it to be big enough to where they're not still doing a lot of roofs themselves. Because what that really means is I can't take on any more business, right? And they'll never say it, but they can't take on any more business, right?
Mm.
Hey,
Another
now,
idea that just popped into my head is who's going to be disrupted here, right? It's the call centers. There's a ton of call centers out there, right? A ton of them. What clients do they have? All of the solar companies, all of the roofing companies, all of the insurance companies, all of the mortgage companies, right? If we can go to them and say, hey, it's like in the nicest possible way, you're in a bit of trouble here, but I've got a way for you to be able to kind of make sure that
I would
you
start
can
running
survive.
Androids to them, right?
Androids to them, yeah.
Yeah, and so you do a multi-million-dollar deal, right? Renting the Androids to
For them,
them, right?
yeah,
Like
for them
you
on
get
behalf
ahead
of
of the
their clients.
curve. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. All right, okay, maybe we can just go into question time. We've been going for almost an hour and 3/4. So geez, there's a ton of questions. Travis, can you see them? Do you want to pick them out? Like, or do you
Well, are
want
we
me to
looking?
pick them?
Are we? I'm probably the worst person to do this, but are we looking at?
Let's look at the chat box,
Well, I've
not the
got two.
Q&A.
I got chat and I got Q&A. Do you want to do chat box?
Yeah, let's do the chat box. I'll ask the good ones out. All right. Uh, did you say?
Why don't you look at them and you just tell me which question? Because
I'll
I'm
read them
terrible
out.
at doing two things at once.
Okay. Well, you guys, if you're listening and you've got questions, write them now, and I'll go back for a little bit of history because I know there's been a ton of questions. Where do bankruptcy attorneys go for their suppliers? I think that was a question. That might be a hard one to answer here, right? But like, I think we were talking about Referral Mojo at that point in time. How would we get this offer in front of bankruptcy attorneys? Any ideas on that one?
Well, again, like I trick people into thinking I'm smart. What I do is I do research, right? So I would go find a trade magazine for a bankruptcy attorney. Now I have had a few clients that have bankruptcy attorneys, right?
Yep.
But one of the things that benefits from bankruptcy attorneys is well, not bankruptcy attorneys, like think of a different attorney. Um,
Tax attorneys or something.
yeah, that um, like what happens before somebody goes bankrupt? What are the trigger points before somebody goes bankrupt? So I would look for things like divorce, medical issues, right? Who are the divorce attorneys, right? Because those are going to be kind of triggers, right? So I would start looking at some of those relationships, right? Now, who bankrupt? Let's see, attorneys pay, probably paralegals, and I'm not that familiar with who they pay, right? But I would just go look at the trade magazines on there.
Yeah. All right.
Ron, I think Ron might have an idea.
A bankruptcy attorney would typically need to do some financial research in order to justify the bankruptcy. There's a service that would do record collection that they would definitely pay.
Record collection.
They would do it.
Yeah.
I don't have a more professional way of doing it, but they don't just take the client's word for it. They have to do a background research and validate it on some level as part of their procedure.
Well, has anyone on the panel got questions, by the way? I know I've seen Matt and Ron, off you go, mate.
I was just hoping to get a set of questions or direction on maybe a checklist of what should be covered during the coffee. Like I've done a lot of this with you, Travis, before.
Yeah.
And I know that you're trying to look for like a personality match, and you're also trying to look for the right sort of type of person, somebody that's going to be flexible and somebody you want to work with.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to size up the deal. But typically you've got some intrinsic, real awesome ways that you go about it. And I just wondered if you had any tips or tricks that you could share.
I'll give you the condensed version, and it works hella good. The biggest mistake, again, is like the biggest thing is we start offering something that they don't want. And part of the reason we offer something that they don't want is we don't ask them what they want. So a lot of times we start pitching our stuff too soon, right? So we want to find out what they want. And it's never the hammer. If somebody walks into a hardware store and says, I want a hammer, like, oh, great. Like, what are you building? What are you doing with the hammer? So we want to find out what it is that they want, right? So if I'm talking with a winery, say, hey, glad to get together with you. Like we were talking about your wine tastings. What would you like? How would you like your wine tastings to look, right? Even though I'm doing email marketing, right? Like how many people are showing up now? How many people would you like to come? Who would you like to come to your wine tastings, right? So we want to find out what they want. And usually I paraphrase that. Maybe they say like, hey, we want restaurant owners to come to our wine tastings. Oh, I see. So you want restaurant owners to come to your wine tastings? How come restaurant owners? Because they'll order a bunch of wine from us, and then all the customers get to see that too, and then they end up ordering more. Okay, so restaurant owners is like one of the things that you want more of, right? Not email marketing. Does that make sense? So once we know what they want, I look at what stops them from getting it, and what are they doing now to get those people, kind of like Dan was talking about with his people, like here's all the steps we're going through, right? And it's working, but we don't have the margins on it because we have too much manpower, right? So we're looking for what stops them, right?
I think also
if you're the winery person, I'm like, okay, well, why don't you like, and I don't say it maybe this way, I'm like, that sounds great. You have a very old established winery. Like, I'm curious, like, why don't all the restaurant owners come to your wine tastings? It's free wine. It seems like everybody, they would come to it. Well, I don't know them, right? They don't know about me or something like that. Well, how are you getting to know about you? Well, I'm running a bunch of radio ads. How is that working? Oh, it's terrible. Why is it not working? Well, because I only want restaurant owners, and I've got to advertise to everybody. Does that make sense? Right? So you need a way to get in front of these people where you don't have to advertise to everybody, and you just get right in front of the restaurant owners, right? So what we do is we're collaborating with them. Does that make sense?
So Ron, if you're looking to sell the Sleeping Beauty Android to the client, Travis is right. You before you go into the call, you want to figure out what it is that the Android's selling, right? So you don't want to demo the Android selling solar panels if they want commercial or a battery, right? You want to have it ready for the right offer that's going to get them excited. And also, every client that I know at the moment is struggling with rising salaries, low margins, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you could quite easily position the Android as something that's going to take a lot of the leads off the plate of the client, which is going to free up their time and reduce their overhead so they can make more margin. Those two things together are going to close a sale for you 99% of the time, because you're not having to do anything fancy. You're letting the Sleeping Beauty thing do its work for you.
We were talking about email, but Dan's right. The same thing with Android, though. That's what I want you guys to get. It doesn't matter what you're selling. You still want to find out what they want, right? And what's stopping them from getting it. What are the costs involved, right? And then, so what you might say is like, how long have you run that winery there? 20 years? Like, are you collecting names? Like everybody that comes to the winery, to the wine tastings now? Yeah, I am. Like, what are you doing with those? I'm not doing a lot with them, right? Like, does that make sense? So, hey, what if we could like reach out to all of them by text, right? And got them booked into your next wine tasting. You didn't have to do anything. How would that sound? Does that make sense? But we don't want to rush in, because what she wants is more people at our wine tastings, right? And probably people that they're going to buy more. It's safe if you have a list of all your buyers. Probably your buyers just don't know when your next wine tasting is going to be, right? Like, what if we sent out a text to all of them, right? And we booked them all in to your next wine tasting, right? So, but that's the basic thing. Find out what they want. Find out not only just what they want. The big people will tell you generally what they want. Your job is to go specific. I want more customers. Okay, what kind of customers, right? Exactly, specifically, precisely. Exactly, specifically, precisely. Right? Our job is to go from general to specific on what they want, and then find out what stops them and what the other options are costing them, right? And then we can say, hey, I've got an idea, or hey, what if we did this, right? But typically what happens is like, hey, Dan, nice to meet you. We've been crushing it with sales androids. I want to show you how they sell androids, right? Or to take my side, hey, we've been crushing it with our 7-day Rainmaker campaign, and I want to show you how that works, right? Because they're not interested in. As soon as you start saying campaign and marketing and all those kind of things, but that's find out what they want, what stops them, what they're doing about it now. I usually add a question like, hey, is this something you want to solve now? Is this something you want to do? Like, when's your next wine tasting? Like, I would do it that way. Like, when's your next wine tasting? Well, it's our last one's going to be December 1st. Would you like to start having more people come to your next wine tasting December 1st, or do you want to wait till next year? Right. So basically what I'm saying is this a nower thing or a later kind of thing? Right. As soon as they say nower, you're going to close the deal most of the time. Like, yeah, that's something I want to do. Now, if they say, oh, I'd rather, but most people don't delay what they want, right? Most people don't delay what they want, right? When would you like to cut some of your payroll costs, right? How much longer, right? I want to cut my payroll costs now, right? Does that make sense? That's how you get deals now, rather than saying, hey, let's do this, right? This thing, putting the email marketing or the Android in, right? You want to focus on what they want and what they want now, right? So usually when you say, yeah, this is something I want to do now, nobody wants the Android now. They want to save on payroll. They want bigger wine tastings. They want
more candles.
Sell their luxury hot tub that they haven't been able to move, right? They want to get that out of inventory now, right? So they can get that cash work. Hey, I've got 5 of these hot tubs. It's not selling, right? And I've got $100,000 tied up in this, and I want to get that cash working for me. I want to buy the new models, right? Does that make sense? So this is a way for them to do that. Let's sell those 5 hot tubs that haven't sold, right? When do you want to sell them? I want to sell them now, right? If they say, well, I don't know, they can sit there more and gather some more dust. Awesome. Like, I can't help you. I'll call you back and whenever you want to sell them, right?
The other advantage you got, Ron, is that this is a performance deal, right? So
that's right.
You know what I mean? So it's not hard to close. And guess how much we sent 400 SMS here, and we've got about £1,500 worth of income. Guess how much that cost in SMS costs, Travis?
Boy,
400 SMS. There's probably about three SMSs on average here, looking at about 1,200 SMSs. In America, the cost of a SMS is less than a penny.
wow.
So you're looking probably at about 12, maybe with ChatGPT costs and maybe about $15 worth of costs your end for 1,500, about $2,000 worth of income.
That gets the investor in me excited. I like to have those odds, right? Where can I invest less than $20 with an upside of 1,000 or 1,500? Like you can screw that up a lot of times and still come up
Exactly.
smelling pretty.
Exactly. So it's not really hard to
Does that help, Ron?
Yes. Part of what you have trained me on is to avoid bad clients and don't chase bad deals. And I see some of the comments in the webinar chat, and then I would just highlight if somebody's got a problem with what you're offering, I would politely move on. And I'm trying to remember what the takeaways were. You had a great way of approaching it. If somebody had a non-negotiable item, you have that's a deal breaker for me, but it's something politer and sweeter.
So this may not go with what Dan does, but this is what I do, right? Because again, I'm not trying to work so hard. I don't try to convince anybody. I just sift and sort. Like if they're like, hey, like you usually find this with smaller companies, but like, hey, I'm not sure if I feel comfortable like you logging in and getting my database. I'm like, cool, that makes sense. Again, like I would. So you've got about $1,000. You've got $1,000 sitting in inventory in your hot tubs. Right? Are you saying that that's going to keep us from selling that $100,000 in inventory in your hot tubs? Right? Because I don't want to do this if I can't log in. Because what I find is like the tech people get in the way, and it just drags for me. So I totally understand. Like if we're not at a place where you trust me to do that, we can just call this friends right now. I just don't try to convince them, right? And they'll either come back and say, it's not that big of a deal. We just had somebody in the past who screwed something up or whatever, right? We get the truth, what I call getting the truth on the table. If somebody wants to look at go ahead, Dan.
What I've also found with my conversations is they say, well, have you got any testimonials or case studies on how this has worked before? And I'm like, well, have you got any testimonials and case studies for how you close leads? My leads, because I'm doing on this on a performance deal. Do you know what I mean? So if you guys can't close them, I don't want to do this deal, and that shuts them up pretty quickly.
That's funny. That's kind of what I say too. Like, hey, like, well, of course I could send you a list of all my best people, but that was not going to show you. But I want to make sure that we understand the proposition here. I'm investing all my money, time, and my energy, right? And I'm taking all the risks the way that I look at it. So, like from my viewpoint, like I should be asking you for testimonials, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm proposing is let's run a test and let's let the data tell it what to do next, right? Sometimes I screw it up, right? And we get goose eggs, right? But other times, like we send out 1,200 texts and we make whatever, how many sales that was, Dan, right? Like,
that'll be like about at least 10 IVAs, 10 debt consolidation products.
So your results are going to be somewhere in between there, right? What I'm proposing is this is data tell us what to do next. Are you open to that? Or is a testimonial is going to be a deal breaker for you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Honey, have you got a question, mate?
I don't have a question, but I wanted to share two things. The first thing that you guys are talking about, the case studies people who ask for. Okay, what I have also found out is that people who ask for case studies, they are more controlling in the nature. Okay, so they will first ask for the case study, then they will want to see what kind of follow-ups that you are sending, then they want to control whatever copy you have got going. So I have refused, like I have been working with Travis. I'm trying to learn a lot from him. So I have refused a lot of those kind of clients just because they are just a bad experience for me. And second thing that I wanted to share, like you asked while you were presenting, that how do we figure out people who have a database of 200 people or who have a bigger database? Okay. So one thing that I have done in the e-commerce space is we have marked the tech that they are using, because somebody who has got 200 customers they are using either MailChimp or they are using default Shopify email setup. But if somebody has a bigger database and they are selling more of whatever they are, they are trying to sell, then they are using something like Klaviyo, okay, where they are being charged like $500, $1,000 a month. So that's something that that you can use
Yeah.
to in your
Pay
niche.
for it or whatever.
There could be some CRM or something where people are paying more for handling the bigger database.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
Travis, go ahead.
With brick and mortar, you can kind of tell how long they've been in business, right? So, like, I wouldn't ask them how big their database is on a brick and mortar. Like, how long you been in business? How many people do you got? Like, how many? And you're going to get an idea. If they've been in business 10 years, they probably got a pretty big database, right? So you're going to kind of know that, right? If that makes sense, right?
And if they're advertising, that's always a good sign.
How are you driving leads now, right? And the big thing for like less than smaller companies, just word of mouth, right?
Yeah. Nat has asked, do you charge any setup costs to cover A2P, etc.? Mate, I make the deal as easy as I can for the test. All right. I don't want any hurdles. I'll cover the costs because they're minimal. I just want to get the deal done because, like, as I told you, we've got results for this guy. And by the way, that campaign just started like 3 days ago. I've already sent that screenshot to 3 other companies in that niche, and they've all signed contracts actually, and they're ready to go. So it's not so much that you want to kind of even cover your costs on that first test. You want to get some results and then use that as leverage to kind of be your internal jab of the heart, as you call it, Travis, to just kind of get more clients. You just need a little momentum to get you going.
Dude, that's money, Dan. I used to, when I would doing these campaigns, I would get a $5,000, $10,000 retainer up front, right? Even though it was a pay for performance, right? And it just made things harder, right? And not so much harder for them. I didn't really have any trouble getting it, but then I was too invested in it, right? And some of these deals where I could have been like done that, right? I already had the money in my account, and I didn't want to. So I stayed in the deal longer than I should have, rather than just saying, hey, right? But it just made it so much easier and so much easier to do business, all right? By eliminating that as an obstacle, right? Now it's just like, hey, does this make sense for both of us, right? Is there enough lead flow? Can we find the right percentage to make it great? And it's just different. You're collaborating rather than trying to sell people, right? And it just makes things more fun, right? Like, and so the times when I am working, I want it to be fun. Like, that's the thing. Exactly. So I don't want to be like convincing and signing contracts that, we have agreements, but I don't want to be like getting lawyers involved and like, all these kind of things, right?
Exactly. All right. Baz was asking, if the business owners don't want to share their database list for privacy reasons or whatever, how can we convince them to share their list so we can get started? So, Basil, like the way Travis, by the way, we use high level for all this stuff, right? So the way high level works is you can create a sub account, which is it's theirs, right? So they're moving their data from their database to another database, another CRM that they own, right? So it's not ours, it's theirs. So any kind of GDPR issues or whatever, I don't deal with any of that. All right. I don't try and get involved because that just muddies the water. And most of these people so desperate to kind of save their overheads and make more sales, right? That that's their bag, right? Jack's asked, just got a sales coach agree to this. Good on you, mate. Any ideas on trigger points to get a response on are you talking about on the Prince Charming SMS? I guess, Jack, you'd have to figure out, what his number one offer is and a little bit more about his database. So I would just have a call with him and figure out as Trevor said, what he wants to sell more of and get an understanding of his database to see, have you got phone numbers? Have they signed up and bought a program before, all that type of stuff. It just requires a conversation. So insurance agencies are a niche that kind of pops up over and over again, Travis, because I don't know how many there are in the States.
Yeah.
There's hundreds and there's probably 1 million of them, right? Insurance agencies. how would you present the referral mojo to them? What are the best practices to get that first insurance client? Any ideas on that one?
So I don't want to cheap out on you, but the guy who invented near naturally existing economic relationship was an insurance agent. And he went to his basic hub was supermarkets. So all the way from the farmer to the being in the supermarket, he worked all of those economic relationships in there, right? So I don't know what I have to go back and read the book, right? I can't remember the name of it. It's Walter Haley. I think it's the only book that he wrote. Wasn't called Near. I can't remember the name of it now. But he was an insurance agent. So the thing is like, who is he writing insurance for? Is he just a general public kind of insurance? Like who's gonna have a stake in that insurance, right? So a lot of companies will get what they call key person insurance. So if the CEO dies or the president dies, right, they got enough cash to hire somebody else and get through that kind of stuff, right? But I would probably, if I remember the name of the book, that would help.
It's called Breaking the No Barrier.
What was that, honey?
It's called Breaking the No Barrier.
Oh, Breaking the No Barrier. That's right. Yeah, Breaking the No Barrier. I don't know if you can get that on eBay or whatever. But if you're working in insurance, it's an older book, and I get a lot more out of old books. The evergreen stuff that it will always work, right? But because you can apply old with new, and that's powerful. But near stuff with your sales androids, right? Like that's what I love to do. I like to take that old stuff and apply it to the new stuff, right? But yeah, I would just find who's gonna end up ruined if they don't have insurance, right? And who is that, and who's gonna benefit from that? I don't necessarily have the answer off the top of my head there, but I knew a health and fitness coach that was doing 7 figures, almost 8 figures a year, right? Was she a better health and fitness coach than everybody else? No, but she worked for oil companies, right? And because one bad back, they can lose a lot of damn money, right? Their health issues. So she would team up with oil companies and do super important to them, right? So it's probably going to be something like that. But he would focus on, now, of course, their insurance, he could sell insurance to anybody, but he would just focus on a segment of supermarkets, right? From the farmer all the way to the, there's farmers, and then it goes to a middleman, and then to the trucking companies, all those things in between. He would sell insurance to, right? So that's kind of where you want to look on those near
Also,
relationships.
for the Android specifically, I'd be looking at all the agencies that are working, the marketing agencies that are working with insurance companies, because there's a ton of those that are selling them leads and stuff, right? So you can do some JVs and talk to them, demo them the Android, show them what it looks like, how it's going to make them look a hell of a lot better to their clients, how it's going to help with their customer retention. It should be pretty easy if you just find that right company.
I worked with a financial firm. It was a smaller one. This was on their client side, but you was surprised, and Dan's stuff in Android is super brilliant in a lot of ways. But we brought in about 50 grand per advisor just by sending out this email. Hey, has anything changed in your family situation? Right? Because what triggers more insurance is when they have kids, right? When they have babies. So who's having babies, right? Who's got a divorce, right? And any change or whose kids went off to college, right? Any of those changes in financial situations would trigger those, right? There's a ex-client of mine who works with financial advisors, and what he does is he just specializes on showing financial advisors how to get more clients by setting up a side business, kind of the right angle thing that Dan's talking about how to get college scholarships, right? On how to help them prepare for college, because people that have kids going to college are going to be great for the financial advisor stuff, but they're like 30 years out from thinking about retiring. So you can get in ahead of that. I call that Wayne Gretzky marketing. Like, what do they need before that time, right? So you can start working with those. But again, like read their trade industry magazines, right? Is where I would go on that kind of stuff. Look at the things that they're concerned about, and who's advertising. You know why they have advertisers in a trade magazine? Because those people are paying them, right? So look at those advertisers, and those are going to be your sources of near leads, right? So anybody's advertising big, all the insurance companies put on big conferences. Look who's buying booths, who's spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands to have a booth at that conference, right? And you've got a near situation there, right? So that's what I would do. It doesn't take long. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Kevin's asked, a client gave me 11K leads who were denied financing, and they were solar leads. Is something this would work with? Well, I guess, yeah, it would. You'd have to figure out how recent the data was. And, you know, for the kind of costs we're talking about, I'd 100% give it a go. We've actually had a student come in, because, you know, there's all of these data suppliers, right? You can ask for a list of 100,000 people that might be interested in solar, right? And usually I'd run away from that type of stuff. I know you definitely would, Travis. But he ran a test of this, and he got I think it was 30, maybe even 47% response rate with our Sleeping Beauty Android and that two-stage SMS that you've seen here. And some of it was, yeah, fuck off. You know what I mean? Don't contact me again. Yeah. But I think you got some deals out of it, right? So yeah, I would give it a go because the costs are tiny. I think you'd be fine. The other thing that I wanted to
look at, what's the you know, investment? What's the risk versus the reward? And like, I'm just looking for enough margin in there to make it worth it, right? What humans have a tendency to do is they focus too much on winning and losing, right? So I do this for my people all the time. I mean, it's like, you got heads or you got tails, right? Most humans have been trained from school to get A's and not to fail, right? And all these kind of things. And it totally screws us up as investors and business owners, because that's not the way money's made. What we want to do, we want to answer our questions, not what's the odds of this coming up heads or tails, right? Or whatever it is how can I stack the odds so if it comes up heads, I get paid 10 grand. And if it comes up tails, I only lose $10, or I only make 1,000. Those are the best ones, right? Hey, if it comes up heads, I make 10 grand. If it comes up tails, I only make 1,000, right? They call that mathematical expectancy, right? And that's where you need to make your decision. So like Dan's saying, like, how big is the lead base? What's the ticket price? What's the worst that can happen? Like, what's it going to cost me SMS wise, right? Okay, so I can sink $100 into this and get out how many messages, and we can run a test from there and we can see what the numbers are, right? What we want to do is get out of our head. This is the worst place to make financial decisions, really. Like, we want to get out of our head and let data tell us what the next one's going to be, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's cool. So. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, this whole thing, you know, I love Dean Jackson, right? And his 9-word email, you know, I've used that so many times. It's so brilliant, right? But I think I wrote a post the other day, an email, I think, where I said this 10 times the Dean Jackson email, because we do this to SMS. Yeah. Which means that everyone opens it, right? And a lot of these lead gen companies and solar companies and roofing companies, in every lead they get, they collect their SMS, right? So what we're doing here is moving away from like maybe a 20% open rate and a 3% reply rate to a 30% open rate, and moving, you know, we booked, 40 appointments from 400 leads that they'd given up on. You know, this is game-changing stuff. I hate to say it, but you can tell I'm excited.
Let me brag on you. Like, I'll just come out and say it. Like, I love Dean Jackson stuff. He's a super smart guy. And the 9-word email is fantastic, but there's only so many times you can send out a 9-word email. But your Sleeping Beauty is like way better from a because they're making them think about them. Like, hey, are you still? Hey, Cindy, were you the one that reached out for this? Like, and then you have the post-it note in there, like, hey, a little post-it note. Because what you're doing is you're painting a picture in their head, right? And Dean Jackson's emails doesn't do that. So, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not basing on Dean Jackson at all. I'm just saying that what you've done with the responses and the Sleeping Beauty is like better than that, because it's like they get to see that they put themselves in a movie, right? And there's another, even though it's an Android, it feels like a human, right? Because you say, I got a little post-it note, right, up here, right? And you're adding a little personality to it, like, oh, I don't want to keep reaching out to you if this is not the right person. That would be embarrassing, right? Like,
Exactly. And guess what we did here as well, right? I had it stuck to my computer to give you a call.
See, that is so brilliant in a lot of ways. One, they see it, right? You're pre-framing that they want to call you without saying, hey, can you jump on a call, right?
Yep, I'm still looking. So they're ready for the phone call.
Yep.
They're ready for the phone call. Okay. Geez, we're running out of time here. Breaking the barrier. Basil, check the community on school. He posted. Okay. The amount of mind-blowing tactics that we've learned in this call is incredible. Thanks, Matt. Dan, are you finding a big difference in results between email and SMS? I have customers who only collect emails. That's a really good question and a problem that people will have, but it's not a problem, right? You're just going to get not as good a results. I mean, people have made a big business out of just sending the Dean Jackson emails, right? But what we're doing here is, Travis just said, I think is better than Dean Jackson's emails. And you can do this entire Android, Sleeping Beauty Android with email as well. It works exactly the same. You're just going to get slightly less results. Can we utilize high level or WhatsApp AI Messenger? Yeah, that's coming as well. So it's going to save on SMS costs, although WhatsApp charges 5 cents per conversation. Okay, so once it's sent out, it charges you 5 cents and then it doesn't go above that. So it can be more expensive as well. So it's not as impressive as it sounds. Is this recorded? Yes, it's going out. It'll go out tomorrow, actually. Dan, how do you send that many texts through high level? Wouldn't they consider that text spam? I've already had my hand slapped for email marketing. No, because the SMS, the beauty of what we're sending out is it's already to people that have opted in for the client. And as you can see, the Prince Charming SMS, that two-stage thing, is very much kind of a low barrier of entry. And we specifically say, I didn't want to call you, but I just wanted to check that I could reach out to you about this. You've gone under the radar here, which means that their guard is already down. So we don't get many complaints at all. We get people to say stop, and high level has a thing that just stops and takes people out of the marketing sequence. Yeah, let's have a quick look at the Q&A stuff. I've actually tweaked Android using Travis's 5 Ps, still testing, but it looks promising. Well, you got a fan there, Travis.
One or two.
My biggest challenge is how do I approach these companies with my pitch? What would you say to a debt collector company from cold email outreach? Raja, I think you're like, this is what we're kind of talking about throughout this call, is the idea is not to reach out to 1,000 companies and find the magic message that's going to get through to these people, right? What Travis has kind of tried to explain today is this is about, getting your lazy side out and figuring out how you can get around this so that you can reach out to 10 people and get loaded of results. But that's going to require you thinking about it, you know what I mean? And coming up with ideas, speaking to people, finding out what they like to sell more of, finding out if they've got products or services that are related to what they're selling, where you might have a foot in for, there's lots of ways of doing it, but you've got to think about it. You know what I mean? That makes sense. So Susan's asked the profit margin, right? So 25 to 50% of gross or net. So let's say there's some services out there let's say it's life insurance, right, or an annuity or something like that. These don't really kind of mature for about 2 to 3 months. All right, so you want to negotiate a much earlier anchor point in the sales process for your margin. And that you can usually work back, because if they get 100 appointments, they'll know that 10 of them convert. So you can work your maths backwards there to figure out what you want to get paid. But usually a good client will know all of these numbers, and they'll know how much they can afford to pay you. And they'll usually tell you that number. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Okay. Other companies and other offers, they mature super quickly. Like the debt consolidation offer, for example, matures sometimes within 2 to 3 days. And we know that they've got a margin of like £4,000 over that time. So we're able to take something that works well for them after they pay their staff costs and their marketing costs and all of that. And that's usually about 50% of £800, which is what their profit margin is. Okay, so again, I don't really worry too much about it. It's usually the client that tells me. They know that you want to work with clients that know their numbers. Okay. And as I said, if you're doing these kind of tests and you're working with clients that are relatively new and don't trust you yet, just make the deal easy. Just get some case studies, get some results, and then the good stuff will happen from there.
Matt with his hand up. If you I don't know if he.
Yeah. Hey, Matt. Sorry, I missed you, dude.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So kind of going off the question that you answered a couple seconds ago, when the client puts their gives us access to the CRM or whatever, and they've already had the customers give permission to do the texting, that integration of them logging in is what gives us permission in turn, correct?
I don't quite follow.
So basically, like she was asking earlier, how do you get past sending the mass texting spam like issue? It like by them logging in, if we're dealing with a life insurance customer and they give us access to their CRM and all these clients have already given permission to do texting, that's the permission that we need, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, anyone that's like, let's say it's a life insurance agent and they've got 1,000 people that have opted in and inquired about life insurance before, right? They've opted in, right, and said they want to be contacted by this company to sell them life insurance. It's just that not many companies know how to follow up and do all of that type of stuff. So it's a little bit unusual for them. But you've got every right, well, the company's got every right to continue to market to their potential customers, right?
I think
that's all we're doing for them.
Confused sometimes is they think it's platform specific. So Matt, if I was like, say you had 1,000 customers, I could text them on behalf of you. Hey, this is Travis. I'm giving Matt a hand today. It doesn't matter what platform it's from, as long as I'm doing it for your behalf. Now, if you just gave it to me and I'm not going to sell something else now that then it would be, but like you can change data, right? And of course, I like what Dan's doing. He's letting them log in and put that data in there. But yeah, you can mail on behalf of this. That happens to be an Android. It's still on behalf of that company though. So they've opted in to get messages from that company.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
Thanks, mate. Someone else has got their hand up. Nat just told me it's Eric Scott. Eric, you there, buddy? I'm going to ask you to unmute.
You may be changing a diaper or something.
He might be gone. Everyone's kind of chiming in. If you don't send links or spam triggering words in the message on your initial message.
Yeah, I don't have a question.
You don't? Okay, mate, no worries. Yeah, I think whether that's about it. Oh yeah, so also with personal injury, these cases don't settle for months or years. What do you sell the PI leads for? We're not selling leads, really, mate. We're selling like appointments, or if it takes months or years to mature, they're gonna have a pivot, an anchor point that they're happy to pay you on, right? They'll know that if they get 100 appointments with their sales team, then they'll know that 10 of those convert into a sale, and they know that each of those 10 sales are worth $10,000 each. So it'll bring in $100,000 from 100 appointments. They can then work backwards and figure out what they want to pay you from there. You'll have a rough idea. Is there a limit to the amount of messages you can send a day for a client? No. Will high levels AI conversation feature make the need for ChatGPT and Zapier integration unnecessary? At the moment, like high level is quite a long way behind what we're doing here, and they won't have the ability to do what we're doing. But I work closely with those guys, Sean, over there at high level, and I've had multiple webinars with him, and we're kind of helping them build that. But for now, they're quite a long way behind us because they're such a juggernaut of a machine. All right. I guess essential call thinners with. I think we might have to. We're going for 2.5 hours here, Travis. I think I'm going to let you leave, mate.
That's short for me, man. But
is that? Oh God,
I'm crazy like that.
Yeah. Has someone tested this setup with WhatsApp integration? It'll work exactly the same for WhatsApp. What else? Yeah, there's lots of questions about WhatsApp. I think that's about it. Anything else there? Did you say we'll get a copy of the Referral Mojo emails and letters? That would be amazing. I'm going to take you up on that one.
Yeah, it's one template, and I'll get that over to Dan. I don't know if it'll be first thing in the morning, but I'll get it over to him in the morning, and he can disseminate to you guys.
Thanks, mate. Well, I'll tell you what, it's getting pretty late here. This has been so good, mate. It really has been. Thank you so much.
You had a great group, man. Like, it's fun. Like, I love that I can see eyeballs. Everybody on the panel nobody fell asleep, so I'm going to consider that a win. Johnny's been exceptionally great, and Natalie's been awesome, and Leela. And that Matt's okay too, but it's been fun.
Johnny's got lots of energy, doesn't he?
Gotta love marketing, man.
Only on the weekends.
All right, man. Catch y'all later.
Thanks so much, mate. Thanks, everyone. See you later. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Okay, thank you so much for sticking around, watching the webinar with Travis. He's a pretty cool dude, isn't he? And basically completing the 5-day challenge. As I said, we have got the program, Roya. If you want to move faster, then please email us. If not, just well done for finishing the challenge and just get cracking, you know what I mean? I often have a saying that sometimes it's better to jump out of an aeroplane and build the parachute on the way down. My best results have always been when I've just thrown myself in and worried about, everything else later, okay, and learning as I go, okay? Some people might be like that, others might not be, but please do just get started because it's a very rewarding and low stress business model once you get it moving, okay? So again, thank you for following me during these 5 days. It means a lot, and best of luck. I'll speak to you soon.